So we come to the final in solving conics questions, and this time we're going to use the graphing mode on the graphics calculator. Personally, I think it's not that much use, but this is to show you why, if nothing else. The problem is you can't draw a conic which you can then use G-solve on. You can draw a conic for sure, and let's do it. So in the type we would enter that we need a parametric one, and I'm going to set my x to be 4 cos t, y to be 2 sine t plus 1, and that is an ellipse, as you might imagine, but when I G-solve I don't get a root and I don't get my y-intercept. So I can draw it, but it's just no use to me at all. So we'll get rid of that, pretty much a waste of time. Delete it, and we'll change the type back to y equals, because that's what we're going to have to use if we want to solve. So we can draw parametrically, but you can't find roots or intersections. So what you have to do is draw it as a function and solve it like that. So here's our question, and we have an equation that we have to solve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange it. Move the x to the other side of the equation, square root both sides, move the 3.7 across, and what have I got? I've got y equals, so that's a function. Of course, it's only the top half, it doesn't include the bottom half, so if you were going to try and solve the bottom half, you'd have to make that minus. But nonetheless, we can work with that, as long as we're careful. We just type that into our calculator, and we have to be careful to type it in exactly. 1.1 squared, you might as well just leave the squared in rather than working it out. And then our second bracket, and we draw that. We can't see it, of course, because it's off the top of our window. So in view window, we go and we extend the y-axis to 8, and then when I draw it, there it is. That's the top half of my curve. Very good. What do I do now that I've got it? So what I need to do with that is I have to use the y calculation function in G-solve, which we've hardly ever used before. The thing is, it's hidden over the corner. There's my options, and those are the ones we mostly use, but over the page there's a y calculation. If I press that, for whichever x value I enter, I get the appropriate y value, and there it is. Our height at x is equal to 2 is 4.33. Same answer we've got every other time. You can, likewise, using G-solve, for any given y value, you can type in, and it will give you, this time it's given us on the left hand side, we can use the arrow to move it to the right hand side, y equals 4.3, x equals 2, which is what we knew anyway. So that's how we can solve using a function form. We can type in x is equal to 2 to give y equals 4.3. Now one of the problems we have is that that's a very awkward thing to type in. What we can do is we can simplify it by centering it correctly and make rearranging the equation that much simpler. It's a much simpler equation to type in. We again use the y calculation function, which will give us 0.63, and then we have to remember to type in the extra 3.7 that was hidden by moving our origin to the center of the circular part. That gives us the right answer, as of course it will, and it was a much easier way to do it. Circles are relatively easy to rearrange, but there's not much you can do with ellipses and hyperbolas. They are difficult to rearrange. So although this method works, unless you are very good at rearranging, there's not much point. If you're that good at rearranging, you might as well just solve it algebraically. The one thing I would suggest is that the parametric version is usually easiest provided you understand how that works.